Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. A legendary Santa Claus parade has been cancelled in southern Alberta due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We will explain where. As COVID cases continue to rise across the country, Manitobans face new health restrictions that bans almost all indoor social gatherings. And a new report says a major culture change is needed with the Rcmp. We hear from Public Safety Minister Bill Blair.
Your nation. Your province. Your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Canada's Chief Public Health Officer, Dr. Theresa Tam, says COVID-19 case counts, which are rising across the country, could even go higher if Canadians do not limit their contacts and follow the rules. Tam says there's potential that health units may be in trouble if people don't take action.
To date, there are about 52,000 active cases in Canada, and despite having over 315,000 cumulative cases, less than 1% of the population across the country has tested positive for COVID-19 to date. This is an important reminder that the vast majority of Canadians remain susceptible to infection. With continued rapid growth in daily case counts, rising numbers of hospitalizations and deaths, and spread in high-risk populations and settings, there is urgency to quickly bring infection rates down across the country.
Alberta reported its highest daily count of the pandemic with 1,105 new cases of COVID-19 yesterday. AHS says there are now 10,382 confirmed active cases, which represents 0.0024% of Alberta's 4.4 million total population. The most infections are in the Edmonton zone with 4,388. The Calgary zone is next with 4,219 active cases. Here in the South zone, meanwhile, there are 540, including 163 in Lethbridge. AHS says an outbreak has been declared at Fleetwood Bodden Elementary School with 2 confirmed cases here in the city. The Lethbridge School Division says the school will remain open. Alberta expects around 680,000 COVID-19 vaccine doses to arrive sometime in January. If all goes according to plan, the province would receive doses from pharmaceutical companies Pfizer and Moderna. Video journalist Ainsley O'Reilly hit the streets of Lethbridge to see if residents would be interested in receiving a COVID-19 vaccine and spoke to an expert about what a rollout could look like for our province.
On Tuesday, Canada's Chief Public Health Officer, Dr. Theresa Tam, said that the optimistic outlook would see most Canadians vaccinated by the end of 2021. On Wednesday, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, Alberta's Chief Medical Officer, said that they'd have to be administered on a per capita basis. So, who would get it first? Health Minister Tyler Shandro tweeted that he'd be working with Alberta Health Services to make sure that it would go to the province's most vulnerable, healthcare workers and those in continuing care. Friday afternoon, I spoke to locals in the community to get their feedback.
If there's a way to stop it 100%, why wouldn't anybody get it?
I pray to God that their projections are correct, that most people will have it by then.
Interested because I think once we're all vaccinated, then life can more return to normal. Granted, it hasn't changed that much.
Craig Jenny, an associate professor at the University of Calgary in the Department of Microbiology, Immunology and Infectious Diseases, said the projected doses would see about 300,000 Albertans being immunized. Jenny says the more people who get it, the better, but the community needs to be willing.
And that's going to be a logistical issue to try and get enough of the population to want to be vaccinated in order to have the community level protection we're seeking.
Both vaccines from drug companies Pfizer, which claims to be 95% effective, and Moderna, 94.5% effective, are among 7 vaccines Canada pre-ordered back in September to make sure Canadians were at the front line for receiving COVID-19 shots. For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
Doctors in Manitoba are welcoming new public health restrictions in the fight against COVID-19. The orders ban almost all indoor social gatherings and prohibit retail, in-person sales of non-essential items. The new rules mean Manitobans are not allowed to have visitors inside of their homes. Doctors Manitoba, which represents more than 3,000 physicians, says it supports the restrictions. The province reported 475 new cases along with 8 new deaths yesterday. Manitoba still has the highest per capita rate of coronavirus cases in the country. Meanwhile, in Saskatchewan, the Ministry of Health says that province could see as few as 4,800 cases over the next 6 months, or more than 400,000. Health officials say the surge in cases over the past few weeks is really Saskatchewan's first actual wave of the novel coronavirus. The government says it expects to see around 180,000 doses of a vaccine from the federal government early next year. It would begin with inoculating frontline healthcare workers and seniors. The Alberta government announced that construction is underway on St. Anne's Haven, which is a continuing care facility in Lethbridge. Officials say it'll be home to 102 people needing supportive living and dementia care. The province contributed $10 million towards the $26 million Covenant Care project. In a statement today, Health Minister Tyler Shandro had this to say: residents of St. Anne's Haven can look forward to expert quality care and services surrounded by loved ones in the same community where they built their lives, raised their families, and made friends. The facility is expected to be open in the spring of 2022. The folks at the YWCA in Lethbridge are hoping for more shelter space. CEO Shannon Hansen says they hope to more than double their current capacity to help women and families fleeing domestic violence. She says more secure, permanent supportive housing for women is needed in our city. Hansen says they are hoping to have upwards of 90 beds available as opposed to the 24 they currently have. Money to purchase the ready-made property is expected to come from Ottawa's $1 billion Rapid Rehousing Plan Fund. Hansen says the current Harbour House facility will continue to be used for permanent supportive housing for women even after the purchase of the new building is completed. Small businesses in Lethbridge are urging people to stick around and shop locally. Both retailers and consumers are facing uncertainty this Christmas season. Loris Alexander explains why it's important to support local business owners while also trying to slow the spread of the novel coronavirus.
It's a chance for Lethbridge to get into the Christmas spirit and a chance for small business owners to bounce back from sliding sales during the pandemic.
It really means a lot to me when customers are buying from my business because it makes our business open and it's not going to shut down our business.
Government-mandated restrictions due to the pandemic have made it necessary for local retailers to adjust their operations.
As everybody knows, we're kind of struggling with COVID and the restrictions that are put on us. So supporting local, you're keeping somebody's dreams, hopes alive. You're keeping the smaller businesses going. We've already seen a bunch of small ones shut down.
It's tempting to go for one-click options, but ultimately it's the local shops that will be paying the price.
Well, times have been tough. Since March we were shut down for 4 months, finally reopened with very little traffic. We've been contending with construction, lack of parking down here, but man, we've got the deals down here and we'll beat the heck out of Amazon because here you can actually see the stuff before you buy it. It's important to keep the money in the locale for Lethbridge especially. So,
for Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
Helping kids to gain self-respect and understanding their goals is a top priority for Bold and Brave in Lethbridge. The company has started a touch-free scavenger hunt for kids and families where funds will go to support local businesses that help kids this holiday season.
And so over the next 10 days, so starting today, we set up everything last night. There's about 9 different locations around Lethbridge where people will get hints. They can go to different locations. It's all driving, but it's all on the south side. And basically they get to have a little bit of fun, learn about a little bit about Lethbridge history because of the locations, and yeah, just be able to get out and do something that's a little different while raising money for the Angel Tree Christmas campaign and wood shelters.
Every donation gives participants a chance to win a $200 Christmas gift basket. To register for the scavenger hunt, you can visit the Bold and Brave website. Santa Claus floats and smiling kids. Now that's the usual fare for the Fort Macleod Santa Claus Parade. But this year, the event had to be canceled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As Mike Quinn explains, this would have been the parade's 39th year running.
November 28th was slated to bring cheer to residents of Fort Macleod, but the recent rise of COVID cases caused Town Council to shut down the Santa Claus Parade.
We've got these increased restrictions, gathering restrictions and whatnot, so Council met on Tuesday evening, late into the night with this topic on their brains, and it was a tough decision for them. So yeah, still hoping to see those smiles. I'll miss that this year. I usually get to hop in the truck with the parade float that brings Santa and just watch all the kids light up and get excited when Santa goes by. So I'm gonna miss that, but I'm excited to go with Santa this year and visit the kids at the school.
This year's event would have been different. with a reverse parade idea and Hollywood Christmas theme.
So all of our registrants were going to park along Main Street and stay stationary for the event. We would have them park there for 2 hours, just keeping it open long enough for traffic to get through. So all our spectators would stay in the vehicles and then drive by the floats. And we had some other fun ideas too. We had some cardboard cutouts of actors and actresses that have been in town for movies that have been filmed here.
The Santa Claus Parade has been set up for next year on November 27th. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Rcmp need help in finding 51-year-old Mark Jensen, who was last seen November 5th near his residence in Foremost, Alberta. All of Jensen's vehicles have been accounted for, and friends have not seen him recently. Jensen is described as Caucasian male, 5 foot 8 inches tall, 170 pounds, with reddish hair and blue eyes. If you've seen him, call the Bow Island Rcmp right away at 403-545-2100. More than $1 million worth of contraband cigarettes have been seized following an investigation by Alberta Gaming, Liquor and Cannabis. Government officials say the potential lost tax revenue was estimated at $292,000. The seizure took place at a storage facility in central Edmonton. Zhang Wang of Edmonton faces charges of trafficking and contraband tobacco and will appear in court on February 17th. Contraband tobacco, by the way, includes products that are purchased or sold illegally and do not comply with government laws related to marking, manufacturing, and stamping. A new report says fundamental changes need to take place within the Rcmp to prevent harassment of women. Public Safety Minister Bill Blair says the Rcmp needs to change its systems of governance, oversight, and accountability.
Part of good governance is also having a strong system that people can trust. Trust in governance, oversight, and accountability, and that transparency. And for the men and women of the Rcmp, they have to know that they will be subject to that oversight and held accountable for inappropriate actions. And I think in addition to supporting the men and women who do the important work of providing police services across this country, it's also important to be worthy of the trust of Canadians. That trust is what makes it possible for the Rcmp to serve and protect the communities they're tasked with serving.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh wants the federal government to put a stop to its role in the profit long-term care homes business. A rally was held on Parliament Hill recently to express the anger and frustration over the amount of COVID-related deaths in long-term care, especially at the government-owned Rivera chain. The event included 2,000 pairs of empty shoes on the Hill's main lawn.
We are losing our loved ones. We are losing people we care for because profits are taking priority over people. This can no longer continue. There is no place for profits in the care of our seniors. The federal government has a direct role in this. They have a direct role nationally, but specifically with Rivera. Rivera is wholly owned by a federal agency. It is completely within the power of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government to immediately make it public and to ensure that it's no longer for profit. The worst sites of loss of life are happening in many Rivera-owned homes. This is directly the Prime Minister's responsibility.
When it comes to the U.S. presidential election, the fight is apparently not over. U.S. President Donald Trump's lead lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, says they have mounting evidence of voter fraud in many states, including Pennsylvania and Michigan. Giuliani says what is a shame is how many of the mainstream media refuse to report on it.
I know you keep reporting falsely that we have no evidence, that we have no specific acts of fraud. That's because the coverage of this has been almost as dishonest as the scheme itself. The American people are entitled to know this.
At last count, Joe Biden had 306 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 232. 270 are needed to win the presidency. The presidential inauguration will take place in January. Projected President-elect Joe Biden says Donald Trump is the most irresponsible president in American history. Biden warned that as the election-related lawsuits linger, it's sending a dangerous message to the rest of the world about how democracy really works.
We've won Michigan. It's going to be certified. We're going to end up making clear that they making clear that we won. And but it just, it's hard to fathom how this man thinks. And it's hard to fathom. I'm confident he knows he hasn't won and is not going to be able to win, and we're going to be sworn in on January 20th. And I just, but far from me to question his motive. It's just outrageous what he's doing.
U.S. Vice President Mike Pence offered an upbeat assessment of the coronavirus situation in the United States, despite a surge in cases and more than 250,000 deaths. He spoke at a coronavirus task force meeting.
Let me say personally, not a day has gone by that I haven't thought personally about families that have lost loved ones, and I want to assure each of you that you will always be in our hearts and you will remain in our prayers. With the massive increase in testing over the last 10 months, with PPE and medical supplies and equipment that are available to the American people, with the medicines and the therapeutics, and very soon the vaccines that are available, America has never been more prepared to combat this virus than we are today.
U.S. infectious disease expert Dr. Anthony Fauci says he wants to settle concerns about a coronavirus vaccine as he returns to the White House podium for the first time in many months.
As you well know, Operation Warp Speed has been supporting directly and indirectly 6 candidate vaccines, 4 of which are either in or completed phase 3 clinical trial. I want to briefly tell you about 2 of them because you have to be interested in this. It is extraordinarily impressive. 2 of the vaccines, one by Moderna and one by the company Pfizer, have completed trials, and the efficacious vaccine efficacy point is extraordinary.
Fauci added that that extraordinary vaccine had a success rate of around 95%. Well, we had some light flurries again in some parts of southwestern Alberta. As for the weekend, not a bad one is shaping up. Complete weather details are on deck. Well, it seems like we saw a little bit of everything today. Some of the white stuff, a little bit of sun and cloud. Jeanette Rocher is here now with a complete look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, considering we're heading into the 3rd week of November, the temperatures really haven't been that bad.
I don't know, Hal. I wouldn't say no to a brown Christmas at this point. But you're right, not too bad with the temperatures, especially coming up into early next week. Overnight tonight, though, partly cloudy skies. We are going to feel quite a bit of wind chill with those wind gusts up to 50 km/h. Wind chill could feel like -12, which is much colder than that -4 temperature. Saturday, high of 4, could also see some wind gusts up to 50 km/h, mix of sun and clouds. Sunday should be a pretty nice day, lots of sunshine, 8 degrees. 4 for Monday under sunny skies. And then Tuesday, we could get up to the double digits of high of 10. Wednesday and Thursday, mix of sun and cloud with a high of 2 and 3 degrees. So that 3 degrees is right around the average high for this time of year. Average low is -8. 17 degrees was our high day back in 2005. In 1996, we had our chilliest on record, which was -32. Sun rose this morning at 7:52 a.m. and our sunset this evening at 4:43 p.m. So today's definitely getting a lot shorter. Over on the west coast, not a bad day tomorrow. High of 9 degrees with a mix of sun and cloud. Fog dissipating in the morning in Vancouver after they've had so much rain the past couple of days. -2 the high in Edmonton and 2 degrees in Calgary with a mix of sun and cloud. Now both of those cities could see increasing clouds by the afternoon though. Over in the prairies, also not too bad here. -1 in Regina. Regina could see a chance of flurries. Saskatoon, mix of sun and cloud with a high of -6. 0 degrees is the expected high with increasing clouds in the afternoon. Now as we look further east into the Toronto, Ottawa area, here we go. With a high of 6 degrees in Toronto, 3 degrees in Ottawa. Ottawa could see a mix of flurries or showers tomorrow. Lots of sunshine in Montreal tomorrow, high of 3. However, they're going to see a low pressure system develop in the afternoon, and it's going to feel a lot more chilly around the -1 degree mark. 11 degrees is the high in Charlottetown tomorrow, 12 in Halifax, 10 in Fredericton. St. John's could see a 40% chance of showers tomorrow with a high of 9 degrees. So there you go, that is your forecast.
Pfizer is set to ask U.S. regulators to allow emergency use of its COVID-19 vaccine. That would start a process that would bring first shots as early as next month. Pfizer and its German partner BioNTech suggest its vaccine appears 95% protective. The Trump administration's Operation Warp Speed vaccine program says around 40 million doses could be ready quickly if emergency use is authorized. Health experts caution, however, that it'll likely be spring or later before there's enough vaccine for distribution to the general public. Retail sales were up 1.1% in Canada in September to $53.9 billion. That was well above analysts' expectations of a 0.2% increase. That is the fifth straight monthly increase since a record drop in sales in April due to the pandemic. Stats Canada says its early estimate for October suggested retail sales were flat. Economists warn as restrictions tighten across the country, in-store spending will slow even more as more and more people shop online. Cineplex has reached an agreement with Universal Studios to shorten the length of time new films play exclusively in movie theaters. The deal gives Cineplex 3 weeks of theatrical exclusivity before they had premium video and demand services. Titles that have an opening weekend of $50 million or more in North America will be guaranteed at least 5 weeks in theaters. Cineplex owns its own digital rental service, Cineplex Store, which would get a cut of the revenues from each rental. It follows other movie chains that have struck similar deals with Universal Pictures after it refused to budge on a strict 90-day theatrical window. Postmedia has notified unionized employees in Vancouver that it wants to reduce salary expenses there by 15% through layoffs or buyouts. The union represents Postmedia employees who work at the Vancouver Sun and Vancouver Province newspapers. It is the latest cost-cutting initiative this year at Canada's largest newspaper group, which also owns the National Post and Toronto Sun. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 109 points on the day to finish at 17,019. The Dow was down 219 points to 29,263. The Rcmp 500 was down 24 points to 3557, and the Nasdaq was down 49 points on the day to 11,854. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 52 cents to 42.47 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 6 cents to 2.65 US. Gold was up 4.45 to 18.70.99 US an ounce, and silver was up 12 cents to 24.18 US an ounce. Wheat is at $269 per metric ton, barley's at $268, canola's at $5.75, and corn is at $288 per metric ton. Live cattle were down 15 cents to 108.25, feeder cattle were down 95 cents to 134.60, and lean hogs were up 43 cents to 63.70. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 76.37 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the Alberta government announced that construction is underway on St. Anne's Haven, which is a continuing care facility in Lethbridge. Officials say it'll be home to 102 people needing supportive living and dementia care. The province has contributed $10 million towards the $26 million Covenant Care project. There's a local organization which is helping new immigrants maneuver their way through the COVID-19 pandemic in our city. Coming up, Jeanette Roche interviews Jackie French with the Southern Alberta Ethnic Association, who has the details. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Bold and Brave is a local organization that inspires youth to be confident and learn life skills, and they're hosting a free family-friendly scavenger hunt from now to November 30th. Register online at boldandbrave.ca and receive your first clue. Begin the holiday season with a beautiful stroll through Winter Wonderland at the Nordbridge Senior Center on Monday, November 30th from 1 to 3 p.m. Cost is only $1 per person or free with a donation of a non-perishable food item for the food bank. Enjoy fresh apple cider and hot chocolate as you take in festive Christmas music and decorations. All are welcome. COVID-19 measures will be in place. Donations of gently used Christmas trees and decorations are gratefully accepted to help with decor. For more information, call 403-329-3222. Experience the magic at the Winterlight Festival at Nikiyuko Japanese Garden, beginning December 3rd from 7 to 9:30 p.m. Bundle up and enjoy the massive light display, ice sculptures, and other surprises throughout the garden. COVID-19 restrictions will be observed with one-way pathways along with other safety measures. Tickets must be purchased in advance. Visit nikiyuko.com or call 403-328-3511 to purchase yours today. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
The COVID pandemic has impacted everyone, but imagine how much worse this would all feel if you were in a strange country, not knowing the language and cut off from family and friends back home. There are close to 341,000 newcomers to Canada, and a number of them are right here in Lethbridge. Joining me to speak about how they are getting the help that they need during this pandemic is Jackie French, the Executive Director of Southern Alberta Ethnic Association. Jackie, thank you so much for joining me today.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Now, first off, let's talk a little bit about what the Southern Alberta Ethnic Association does and why it exists.
Well, we've been here, well, not in this location, but we've been in existence for just over 40 years. And basically, we are a multicultural hub. So we allow different cultural groups to come in and showcase their culture through events and presentations. So it allows different cultural groups to celebrate their holidays and festivals and their culture while welcoming the community and having them participate and learn about the different cultures that we have within our groups.
So with all these newcomers here to Canada, and of course a number of them are here in Lethbridge, how many different languages and cultural backgrounds are represented in your membership, Jackie?
So we have about 25 different groups that are members here at the Multicultural Center, and of which many different languages. So one group, for example, might have 5 or 6 different languages within that group. So it's tough to say how many languages exactly, but for our membership, we have about 25 different groups.
And how many different translators do you have?
Well, translators, we get from Lethbridge Family Services. So if somebody is in need of a translator, we will hire a translator through Lethbridge Family Services and get them to assist us with either translating a document or translating for us. We do have some members and staff members on site that speak different languages as well. So if we can utilize them, we do. And if not, then we reach out to hire a translator.
Okay, and speaking of languages, a lot of your members struggle with that language barrier, and that sort of isolates them from the community. So how have they been handling this crisis? How are they feeling about it all?
Yeah, I mean, COVID is very difficult for everybody, but it's especially difficult if you're from a different country and you know, this is all new to you and you don't know a lot of people, you don't have a lot of family around. So that makes it even more difficult. And you could be living with a stranger, you know, different circumstances. So that's why we're trying to offer this program to help with that.
Now, Jackie, your organization has a COVID-19 assistance relief program, and this is brand new. So what's the main objective of this new program?
I mean, the main objective of this program is to assist our members and to assist newcomers. So COVID can be difficult to understand when you have a language barrier or if you're alone. So basically the program is set up to help people that are struggling with anything to do with COVID. So it could be if they're in isolation, they may need somebody to go get groceries for them, or they may not know how to set up a COVID test. So we're receiving a lot of calls about that, they need assistance to help set up for COVID tests, or they may need help filling out EI forms, or for CRB application, or any kind of government documents that they may struggle with reading the English language. So, or I mean, sometimes it's hard enough even for us to understand those documents or how to fill out those forms. And so imagine having a bit of a language barrier. So we're assisting with any kind of that, you know, any kind of assistance with that. They may also need help with supplies. So they might need sanitizer, or they might need masks, or they might need to know, how do I care for my husband that has COVID? So we assist with that. We also assist with job search. So they may have lost their job due to COVID. So they may be struggling, well, where do I find a job? So we try to help with that. Really anything, or translation of documents, or they may need us to set up doctor's appointments for them, or maybe they're struggling with depression or isolation. So then we can set up appointments for counseling for them. Really anything to do with COVID, we try to help with that.
And are these volunteers then that you have set up to help your membership, or are they your employees?
Yeah, currently we're using our staff, and then we have hired a contracted COVID relief program coordinator. And so he is one of our members, and he was doing this project with his own group. And now I said, you know, what a great idea. Let's expand this to our whole membership. And so we applied for some funding, got some funding, and now he is contracted, and he's in the office here twice a week, Monday 9 to 3 and Thursday 3 to 7 for drop-ins, but he's accessible at all times. So they can contact the office and we can put them in touch with Santos, or they can pop into the office and we can put him in touch with Santos. He can be here in a matter of 10 minutes. So we set up a couple days a week where he's in the office for drop-ins, or he sets up appointments during those time, but really he's accessible any day of the week.
I'm sure he's quite busy these days.
Yeah, he is quite busy with this, actually. So we're finding that a lot of the members are utilizing it and needing some help. So I'm glad, you know, I'm glad that we're doing it, but we want to just make sure we're reaching everybody with our membership and newcomers. So letting them know that we're here if they need any assistance.
And what are the biggest resources your members are struggling to access?
Most of them, like I said, are supplies. So if they are in isolation and they need groceries or they need masks or sanitizer, we can take that to them. We can go get groceries for them. They just e-transfer us the money or give us the money when we get there, but we can make sure that we get the supplies to them if they're in need. A lot of them have been reaching out to fill out, you know, EI, permanent resident card renewal. We've had some of that. We've had, you know, we need help filling out the CRB, setting up appointments for COVID testing. They're not sure where to go. Reading government documents, they might need a translator. And then we also are we're in touch with the public health on a weekly basis. And so we're trying to update and send out that information to them, or if there's a real language barrier, we might call and have that information translated to them.
You'd mentioned they're able to access counseling as well. So what types of counseling are they being offered?
You know, mostly it's isolation and depression issues, right? I think there's a lot of the community in the world really struggling with depression right now because of COVID. And so if we have had some people reach out to us for that reason, and so then we would refer and set up appointments for that counseling services.
And Jackie, what have you been hearing back from the membership about this program?
The feedback that our coordinator has been getting is just people are really grateful for the help. Because of the lack of understanding and the struggles, people are just really glad that we're here and that we can give them some kind of assistance. So we even had somebody reach out to us, which is probably the best story I can tell you. I think he reached out to us because he needed some groceries. And then when our coordinator went there, he was in extreme pain, and he was a 73-year-old man. And didn't have any family here. And so our coordinator actually took him to emergency and then got a volunteer to go there and sit with him. And then, you know, until he could get through emergency and then return home. And also that person was struggling a lot with finances, because living on an old age pension is very low income. And so he had some health problems, and so our coordinator was also able to help him and get him set up with AISH. And so that's probably currently our biggest helpful success story. But I mean, there's several people just reaching out that we're helping, and they're just happy that they're getting some assistance.
It sounds like a really great program, Jackie, and maybe talk a little bit about some of the other projects the Southern Alberta Ethnic Association is working on.
Normally we do some great programming, some cultural programming where we have big festivals and events, and due to COVID, we haven't been able to do that. So one thing that we are able to still do in a little bit different, safer manner is our taste of events. So pretty much every month we have a taste of event where we make a different, one of our membership groups comes in and makes a cultural dinner from back home, and then we do a pickup dinner. And so what we've been trying to do to make it a little bit more fun and educational for the community is we'll set up a little bit of a display when people come in to pick up their meal. We might have a video playing of some background of that culture. We'll have a flat sheet with some information about that culture and about the food that they're eating, and some display items that they can look at. But this Friday, our event is Taste of Ecuador to go, and it starts at 5 p.m. and we do have tickets here in the office, or we have them also on Eventbrite. You can email us, you can e-transfer us, you can come into the office to pick up the tickets. Several different options, but they're $20, and it's this Friday, November 20th from 5 to 7. And it's going to be a great meal. So we're doing, you know, trying to do that every month. We did a smaller event for our members for Halloween. We do have some inclusion and diversity workshops that we're working on. So we're hoping to reach out to some of those companies, or if there is a company out there that has a lot of newcomers working there and immigrants, please reach out to us because we can help with some training for that. That's something that, you know, we've done in the past and we want to kind of become a leader in the community of. So we would like to offer more information and education on inclusion and diversity. So if you are a company that's looking for that, please, you know, reach out to us and we can help you with that. In the past, we will have some more upcoming, we do a lot of language courses online. So in different language, it might be Japanese or you know, whatever. I think we did one in Arabic that we'll probably do again because that one was quite popular. Spanish is very popular, so we'll be running some more language courses online, and those are free to our members. And with COVID, I think we had a small fee before, and we may even offer it for free. But anyway, watch our website and our social media platforms, or feel free to contact us and we can put you on our email out list. Make sure that you get all that information. Come January, we've partnered with the library, the Lethbridge Library, so we'll be offering Canadian citizenship courses and just trying to do some different things. We have to pivot our programming a little bit to more online stuff as versus in person, unfortunately, due to COVID. So we're trying to pivot that programming and make sure we're still helping our members and the community to educate them on different cultures and in a fun and inviting way.
And how can viewers look you up and get in touch? What's your web address?
So our address is saea.ca. And our phone number is 403-320-1577. And our email is info@saea.ca.
And you're located right here in Lethbridge. What's your address?
Yeah, we're located at the Multicultural Center. So it's the Southern Alberta Ethnic Association, but we manage the Multicultural Center and we are located here. And our address is 421 6th Avenue South. And we really do have a beautiful facility here. And so part of the other thing that we do here so that we can stay afloat is we have facility rentals. And because of COVID, of course, we're just doing small things right now, but we have a beautiful facility here with a couple great ballrooms and a couple great meeting rooms. So come down and visit or look us up if you're having a small wedding or a small meeting.
Jackie French, Executive Director of the Southern Alberta Ethnic Association. Thank you so much for joining me today.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Sometimes life storms can really flip us upside down, causing a lot of turmoil in our lives. And for those who are going through it, sometimes we need a lifeline. Joining me now to talk about it is Dr. Edward E. Moody Jr. He's the Associate Dean of the School of Education at North Carolina Central University, and he's also author of the book First Aid for Emotional Hurts. Eddie, welcome to Bridge City News.
Oh, it's good to be with you. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Hal.
You bet. You're joining us from Music City, USA, Nashville, Tennessee. Now you say that hurting people desperately need someone to talk to. What does it take to become an effective listener?
Oh, well, getting our minds off of ourselves, kind of thinking about what the other person's saying. And so often we try to fix the person. Just forget that, let it go out the window, pay attention to what the person says. And I think it helps us sometimes to kind of paraphrase, what someone talks about. So let's say you've got a friend, they're like, oh no, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job with this whole COVID-19 crisis. Instead of saying, no, you're not going to lose your job, just listen and a little bit of that. And so this is kind of concerning. And after we listen to them a bit, we can get a chance to share with them, well, the Lord can help us through something like that, or share a passage with them. But the first thing, or the most important thing, is just give them time to tell their story, which gives them an opportunity to get that out. They're used to people trying to fix them, if you will. Just let them talk about what it is that bothers them, that's giving them difficulty, and people tend to feel better after doing a little bit of that.
Now, in recent months, we've witnessed many tragedies and other disasters. Eddie, what should we do, or maybe not do, to help those who are suffering?
Well, we don't have to really say anything. It's a bit like the example in Job when his friends went and visited him, and the scripture says they were just with him for a couple of days. They listened to him. So it's important just to be with someone, to be present with them, let them talk, pat them on the back if it's safe to do that in a COVID-19 situation. But we're just trying to be present with them. Too often people say, well, I want to say the right thing, or I want to quote a particular passage. And it's really better to listen, to be there with them, and then to just go through your mind and think, what does this person need? So like after a tragedy, there's all kinds of needs. There's little tasks that need to be taken care of. So offer to take care of one of those tasks and just get busy fulfilling a particular need that a person can have, because there's so many things that have to be dealt with after a tragic event.
And you mentioned COVID-19 earlier. I'm thinking of sometimes people need a hug, but then you can't even give that person the hug, so that makes it even that much more devastating and that much more tragic. Now, you say that being a helper does not necessarily mean that we're always pleasant. Why is that?
Yeah. Well, people can be getting off track. So I talked to someone today that has a child that's involved in substance abuse, and really that particular individual needs something that's not, they don't really need to be coddled, or they don't need to be enabled or rescued. And so sometimes we're giving words to people like, you really need to consider what you're doing. You need to think that through a bit. And at times we even let them bear the consequences of what it is that they've done. So for example, with a substance abuse situation, person might get arrested, and instead of quickly bailing them out of jail, we may set some parameters, or make some requirements for counseling, or set up some sort of procedures to take care of that person more effectively. So it's not always, when you're helping someone, sometimes they don't really appreciate the help, but that's some of the best kind of help. And if you think of the Bible, there's examples of that there, Nathan and David and so forth. And that's really the kind of person that we're called to be when we're trying to reach out and help another individual.
I've had some friends with a family whose son ended up in jail, and the father says, I want to let him rot in there for a few days just so he can learn his lesson. Tough love. What do you think of something like that when a dad says that?
It's not a bad idea. I mean, I don't like the word rot, but there's probably several people that ended up in correctional facilities. And by the way, I worked for several years as a psychologist in a correctional facility. And I would often say that's one of the best places a person can be. You can't really engage in substance abuse. There's occasions where people figure out a way to do that. But for the most part, it's an opportunity to just have some quietness. Sometimes we have treatment there in those particular facilities. That's what I was doing. And honestly, it's a good way to get someone's attention and really be able to help them get out of the situation they're in. So maybe not use the word rot, but we are thinking strategically. And then when someone does come out of that, when we bail them out of jail, or even when they're talking with law enforcement and in particular judicial officials, it's good to have, you're going to go back if you don't participate in these particular activities, or if you begin to do something that's getting you down the trail of getting in trouble again.
Eddie, many people believe we need to really understand our limitations as helpers. What are some of the risks or liabilities?
Well, just taking on someone's behavior and thinking that you can control that. In other words, this person, let's go back with the substance abuse. It's on me if we're thinking it's on me if that person doesn't stop or if that person doesn't get right with the Lord or doesn't get out of this. You can't change anyone. You know, you can't make a person do anything. So we can offer assistance, we can offer help to people, but we get into trouble when we begin to tie our self-esteem or tie our well-being into something that someone else does that we can't control. So we have to understand we're really a tool. You know, we're like an ambassador, a representative of the Lord. We can offer some assistance. We can try to reach out and be there for individuals, but we can't fix them. And really, ultimately, it's up to them as to what they end up doing. And we can't take on too much of that. That's where the enabling gets in, and sometimes people manipulate that and use it against us, and it's bad for them as well.
Now, in your book, you talk about how important resilience is and how people recover from trauma. Is it possible for a person to nurture resilience?
Oh, it is, and we're seeing that a bit now with the whole COVID-19 situation. So if we try to guard against anything bad happening or try to protect from every eventuality, it really pushes back against resilience, developing resilience. And so, for example, in our own children, it's good when they have the consequence of, you know, getting a bad grade after they've not studied and so forth, someone losing a job after doing poorly or after misbehaving at that particular site. What tends to happen is when we have difficulties, it tends to help us develop and to become more effective people, and we tend to learn from that. And if you think about the scripture, some of the people that were most effective were those that really had some difficulties in life. Think about Joseph. You know, he's sold into slavery, he's mistreated by his brother, and he's forgotten in jail. But that developed him into a person where he could end up being the prime minister really of Egypt. We see that in historical figures as well. You think about the president Teddy Roosevelt in the U.S., lots of sickness as a young person and a lot of tragedies in his life, and it probably helped him develop into the leader that he became. So when something bad happens, the scripture says God takes it and he uses those things for good. If we kind of know that in the back of our head, it's bad, it's not pleasant what's happening to me, but there's a God that's working this to my advantage and turning me into the person he wants me to be. If we have that in our mind, it does help us to deal with it more effectively. And down the road, we can often look back and say, wow, I didn't like that, but it sure did help me become, you know, a more successful person, or the person that I believe God wants me to be.
Now, Eddie, we live with myths in our lives and how life really should be. What are some of these, and how can we develop a balanced and correct perspective on life?
Well, there's even myths that Christians have, and one that I dealt with often in my work was that Christians don't get depressed. And so we hear things like that, or we hear things like bad things don't happen to good people, or that life is always easy, life is always good. And so one of the ways we push back on those myths is we focus on reading the Bible, look at the followers of Christ, the disciples of his. They did not have just wonderful lives. They were not wealthy. They died, most of them poor and in bad ways. And so we can see that God took the bad things in their lives, he used them for good. And we can also see, if we are a student of the scripture, where people experience difficulties, things that we often hear that aren't true. And as we begin to realize, no, there are some Christians that get depressed. There are some Christians who their children pass away suddenly. And there are people that do everything right and lose everything. You know, it helps us to kind of have a better view of the world, a more accurate view, and it helps us to kind of weather those storms as we all deal with them, as we come into them in our lives.
I recently lost my nephew. It's my wife's youngest sister, youngest son, and I got to tell you, it's been really traumatic for our family, but by the grace of God, we are getting through it right now. through His strength. Now, you include an entire chapter on depression. Why is depression increasing, Eddie, in spite of counseling and medication available today?
I think how we've gotten away from the Lord in many ways. And, just like in the scripture, you see Jonah trying to go the other way, and that can lead people to be depressed like that as well. I also think just some of the circumstances, for example, right now, people are often lonely. People can't work the way they used to. Sometimes they can't go and worship like they used to do. So those circumstances put them in a situation where they're more susceptible to depression. And I think that there's an example of, like, Jeremiah in the Bible is an example of that. And then I think there are people that are prone to depression, and just like if you had cancer, there's medications and there are treatment regimens that help, but they're never quite perfect. And so the medications and even like some of the therapies that we use are not always perfect. And there's some people that's just their thing, they're a thorn in the flesh, if you will, that they must deal with. So I think as Christians, we need to realize we're all in this thing together. Probably at any point, you mentioned the passing of your nephew, that could lead people in your family to be down for a period of time, and that's a natural thing. It's not what we would call clinical depression, but they feel pretty bad, and so all of us are going to have times like that. And I think we have to realize that's just what happens to us in this life, but we're there to support each other, to bear the burdens, and to know that God walks with us as we go through those times, and we can get better. And we will get better if we do the right things and stick with the Lord.
Yeah, with my getting back to my nephew here, parents should never have to bury their kids. It's a tough time. I couldn't imagine what parents in the Second World War, the First World War went through. Now, Eddie, we live in a culture that seems to glorify the mantra, if it feels good, do it. Now, that could lead to abuse and dependence, though, can it not?
Oh, it can, and it leads to not feeling too good. There's a lot of research that talks about basically people going and trying to have a lot of pleasure, and just things that you and I might enjoy or we enjoyed when we were kids are no longer fun for them. And so an example of something like that is pornography, and that's a big problem today. And so people began to engage, some people begin to engage in that particular activity, and it does things to their brain. And what we'll find sometimes with the research is then they can't even enjoy a wholesome relationship with their spouse. They're married to, a guy's married to his wife, and he can get to a point where he can't even have satisfaction in that situation. So there's a lot, the scripture teaches this, but the research shows us this too. When it's all about having fun and it's all about pleasure, it takes away from the pleasurable things in life. And I think we may be picking up a little of that now with the current situation. Sports, until now have been taken away from us, and a lot of the things we used to do for fun, we can't really do now. But on the other hand, it gives us the opportunity to see a walk in the park, or, just enjoying the outdoors a little bit, or a nice conversation with someone, social distancing, of course. That's a wonderful thing. And it may end up kind of restarting or helping us reset the things that really can bring pleasure to us.
Eddie, let's talk about addiction for just a moment. Once again, let's circle back to that. Sometimes people replace one addiction with another. Let's chat a bit about that.
Well, absolutely. Back in the old days when I was doing some of this work, it seemed like everyone that used to abuse alcohol or some other substance now was a smoker, and on the breaks, they were out there just smoking away. And I'm like, this can't be good. So there can be a bit of that. The scripture talks about, don't be drunk with wine, but really be drunk with the Holy Spirit. And I also used to be a pastor. And so really, I think in many people's lives, we're trying to help them to replace these addictions. If you stop a behavior, you have to replace it with some other behavior. And so I'll give you an example. I had a a person that was just working, doing a lot of things in the church. And I had someone come to me and said, I'm afraid for George. I just think he's doing too much. I think he's going to wear himself out. And I just patted him on the back and said, it's okay. In other words, George knows exactly what he's doing. And so I didn't go into this with them, but like George is working hard so that he just works himself almost to exhaustion. Then he goes to bed at night. And that's kind of what he's got to do. He's replaced Jesus activities with these other things. That's kind of what he's got to do until he gets a reset. So when someone's addicted, it impacts them on every level, and you can't get away from what it does to a person's brain. So it's almost like you reset things. You have to almost detox, whether it's a behavior or an activity. You have to kind of reset all that.
Dr. Edward E. Moody Jr., author of the book First Aid for Emotional Hurts. Thanks for joining me today from Nashville, Tennessee.
Thank you, Hal. It's been a pleasure to be with you today.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.